In a lot of cases, it depends on the type of training, and I know that, right? But in a lot of cases, we don't think to that level necessarily. We just say, oh, I'm going to give them the information, and then they're just going to have to, most of the time we want them to apply it, right? Or at least we want, and if it's awareness, we want it in the front lobe. But there's some things that we want them to think about. I don't want you to get wrapped up around the axle on this, because this is really can get detailed, and you can get much more in depth. So if you guys want to look it up, and I gave you a lot of information in the back in the appendices section that kind of spells some of this out. But basically, if you think about it this way, this is a psychologist, professor, and he wanted to talk about different levels or classifications of learning. I just want you to understand that there are different levels and different things that you want people to do with the information. If you think of it this way, when you started off in kindergarten, what did they want you to do? Remember, right? You had to remember to count what number came after what, and you had to remember your colors, and they mixed that in with some fun things to do, some hands-on stuff. But as you went through school, did you not see that there were different levels that you started seeing up until the point you got into high school? Because when you were just in grade school, you're probably doing more understanding things. Then as you got into middle school or junior high, now you're starting to apply it, analyze some of this stuff. And basically, if you think about it this way, when you get through college, does that really prepare you for that particular job that you got with that degree? No, they gave you concepts and they gave you some great ideas, but now it's up to you to take those things and create it and actually bring it to a whole new another level, and that would probably be closer to that evaluating or that creating stage, that you can take information from somewhere else, modify it, make it work for what you need. Okay? So I think it really is that you have to answer that question. I didn't throw this up to say, okay, this really needs to be detailed. It's a thought pattern that I wanted you guys to kind of think about. And obviously, I kind of spelled it out a little bit for you, but I don't want to sit here and just focus in on, well, gee, you have to pick one. Generally, try and get to the area that you want to and what you can do to get them to that area. So I did give you there's spelled out definitions in the back that kind of cover this, but then part of this also is that this is what you're providing them over here, this is what you're giving them over here. This is the different, levels of learning up here. So if you look at this, you're providing them facts or concepts, processes, procedures, principles, or metacognitive, which means that you're actually wanting them to take that information a step above, which is kind of what college does for you. And it's just a one-word phrase. So it really isn't, don't get wrapped up around that axle. Just look at the word and kind of get the general idea of, gee, if I was going to give them some facts, what do I expect them to do with those facts? Or if I give them some procedures, I want them either to reproduce that, give an example, relate it, identify it, critique it, or plan. I want them to be able to take that information and do something with it. I want them to apply it. So most of the time, I want them to relate or to produce, right? With that information, if I'm looking at procedures, if I was just getting to a particular level. So it's another way of looking at things to say, okay, this is the direction I'd like to go with the training, okay? It's just a thought, okay? So just kind of put it under your hat and think about it. And of course, you have examples of training, right? So we have different ways that we train people and different thought patterns when it comes to that training. So we have that awareness training, and I think, here I'm going to date myself again. How many people remember or have heard of Hill Street Blues, the television show? But the thought pattern is he had everyone in the room before they went out on patrol, right? And they went through what their expectations were for that day. And then the last thing he said before they went out there is what? Let's be safe out there. So he puts that thought right in the front lobe before they leave, right? To get them to think about what they're doing out there. It's the same thing with the safety minute. And it's the same thing with tailgate meetings, is that you're trying to put that information, just get them thinking about it, put it in the front lobe. So that they think about, I have to stay safe, I need to wear my eye protection, I need to wear my hard hat, I need to do whatever it is that I'm supposed to do today. Now, when we have a new employee come in, don't we give them new employee orientation? Along with all the other information we give them in that 2-week period of time, right? Because we overload them with all kinds of good information. We give them their responsibilities. We talk about what the safety policies are. What do we expect them to do in an emergency situation? Where are we going to meet? Are they supposed to use a fire extinguisher? And if you're going to have them use a fire extinguisher, you've got to train them on that. But I mean, we generally give them the lay of the land in this new employee orientation and give them just the general ideas within our organization. And then hopefully before they start, this is where we do the specific job training, right? Before they grab a piece of equipment and start working with it, we run through it. Even if they supposedly have experience on this, we want to take them out there and at least go through it with them to make sure that they're going to do things the way we prefer to see things done, not the way they used to do it at another organization or something. But we want to do job-specific training. Here's the steps. Here's the procedures. This is how we do things here at whatever, okay? And then we do have regulatory requirements. And I threw up, these are the OSHA ones, right? Then these are more industrial. But workplace violence, we know, would be one of those things that we would need to take a look at. Evacuation procedures, building those. Certainly we have other things that we need to pay attention to that would be in those procedures. I know that, you know, if you're into healthcare, for instance, you have other people besides OSHA and the safety folks coming through. You do have other people that are looking at how are you doing business and what procedures and processes to make sure your patients and your clients are safe. We generally overload people within that first 2 weeks, right? I know that just changing from the Department of Labor and Industry to state fund, I tell you, after 2 weeks, my head felt this big. It wasn't, but it felt like I had that much information carrying around in my head, right? They just kept piling it in there. And I swear to you, every night I went home, it felt like a trickle of information that was just falling out, because there's no way that you can process that much information that fast, and all of it's in a stick. So you have to also remember that when you train people, some things will stick, some things won't stick. So in that particular case, if their actions show that they're not retaining that information, you'll have to do some refresher training. Or if you transfer someone over to a new position, it's still within the organization, but they move over to a different part of the organization, different procedures, different processes, they need to be retrained. And the same thing goes for, you know, the equipment. If you change the equipment, or you change your facility, for instance, or you make any changes within your business, certainly you want to have the ability then to be able to go back and retrain them on what the new requirements are. Because we get a really bad rap on this, but a lot of us will open up a new piece of a tool, right? A new tool, pull it out of the box, put it together, plug it in, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work, now we got to go back and figure out what we did wrong. Now we go back to the instructions, right? But a lot of times we go in and start putting things together. That's not what we want to do in this situation.